You ever watch a moment so tense, so raw, that the entire room seems to freeze? That's exactly what happened when one member of Congress decided she'd had enough. Enough silence, enough excuses, enough of an agency that's supposed to be independent acting like it owed loyalty somewhere else. And the second she opened her mouth, everyone knew this wasn't going to be a routine hearing. This was going to be an unraveling, a peeling back of decisions, names, patterns, accusations, all pointing toward one unsettling possibility: that the very institution built on neutrality may have been quietly bending to someone's political will.
Questionnaire, you said, I quote, personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law, and every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments. So I want to just go through a couple scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed and it's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleladies.
And once she started, there was no stopping where the questions would lead. It began with something simple, something everyone in public service promises. A vow that the FBI would never be politicized. A vow that careers wouldn't rise or fall based on ideology. A vow that every agent and analyst would be treated the same, judged only on performance and the law. Those were the words spoken during confirmation. Words meant to reassure not just Congress, but every American watching. But vows mean nothing if reality turns out to be the exact opposite. And that's what made the confrontation so explosive. The growing belief that behind the scenes, something entirely different was happening. The director repeated the same line over and over. We don't ask about political affiliation. We don't terminate based on case assignments. We don't interrogate employees about how they vote. It sounded firm, confident, absolute. But that's when Representative Deborah Ross leaned in. Not with hypotheticals, but with specifics she said came straight from the people living it. She pointed to lawsuits, depositions, testimony that allegedly shows employees being questioned about who they voted for. Not once, not casually, but repeatedly, and during moments that could shape their careers. Rumors online have long suggested that certain applicants felt a quiet pressure to express ideological alignment, even if nothing official was ever written down. And now, according to a lawsuit, some of those questions weren't rumors at all, but Ross didn't stop at voting questions. She moved to something even more serious, firings. Because one firing may raise eyebrows. 2 could be coincidence. But 3? All involving people tied to politically sensitive investigations? That's where the word pattern begins to mean something. The first name she invoked sent a ripple through the room. Brian Driscoll. Nearly 20 years in the Bureau. Medals for Valor. A critical incident specialist trusted with some of the most dangerous operations. By all accounts, someone the FBI should want to keep, someone who had seen more than most agents ever will. But what Driscoll reportedly faced during his interview wasn't about his tactical skills or leadership. According to documents filed in court, he was asked about his voting record in multiple past elections. These aren't casual questions. Federal employees are not supposed to be probed about their political history. And when he refused to answer, insisting those questions were improper, the process seemed to shift. Shortly after, he was gone. The official explanation didn't mention politics at all. But when timing and testimony line up too neatly, people start asking questions. And Driscoll wasn't the last. Ross then introduced the next case, Steve Jensen. Nearly 2 decades of service. A record of leading counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime investigations. Someone described internally as everything the Bureau stands for. But Jensen worked on cases tied to the events of January 6th, cases that fired up political passions across the country. And online groups hostile to those investigations reportedly targeted him, pressuring leadership to remove him. Critics claimed the Bureau's decision to part ways with Jensen shortly after wasn't about performance at all. It was about pressure. It was about optics. It was about whose cases he touched. That kind of allegation, even when framed as speculation, strikes directly at the question of independence. Then came the third name. And for many watching, it sealed the emotional impact of the exchange. Walter Jardina, a decorated combat veteran. Someone who had already risked his life long before joining the Bureau. Years of service. A reputation built on discipline and integrity. His mistake? Working on investigations involving foreign interference and high-profile political allies. Cases that were messy, controversial, and heavily scrutinized. Cases that drew national attention. And soon after he worked those cases, he too was out. 3 agents. 3 long careers. 3 politically sensitive assignments. 3 sudden endings. If it were fiction, it might feel overdramatic. But these were sworn statements, public filings, and congressional testimony. And as Ross connected the dots out loud, the room's energy shifted from questioning to confrontation. Because this wasn't just about the individuals. It was about what it meant for the entire agency. If even one firing happened because of political pressure, that's a breach. If 2 happened, that's a warning sign. If 3 happened, that's a crisis. Ross didn't mince words. She told the director directly, "You are running an FBI for the president rather than the people." That single sentence carried decades of institutional weight. The FBI is supposed to be neutral, detached, unmoved by elections, ideologies, or political storms. It's supposed to follow facts, not preferences, law, not loyalty. But if employees were questioned about votes, if assignments led to retaliation, if investigations into powerful individuals led to firings, then neutrality becomes an illusion. And when neutrality collapses, trust collapses with it. Inside the agency itself, morale reportedly took a hit. Commentators online have claimed that some agents felt like walking on eggshells, unsure whether certain cases could put a target on their backs. That kind of atmosphere doesn't just hurt individuals, it fractures the foundation of federal law enforcement. It makes agents hesitate. It makes analysts question whether certain leads are safe to pursue. It creates the kind of uncertainty that weakens every case touched by that culture. And for the public, the implications are even bigger. If people start believing investigations are influenced from above, confidence fades. Fairness feels compromised. The system feels tilted. And once that feeling spreads, it's almost impossible to bring trust back. The hearing wasn't just about 3 names. It was about whether the public could still believe the Bureau acts independently, that Ross's confrontation underscored something deeper. Oversight exists for a reason. Without pressure, without questions, without checks, any institution, no matter how respected, can drift. Rumors grow. Power concentrates. Accountability slips. And before anyone realizes it, decisions stop being about justice and start being about preservation. What made this hearing go viral online wasn't just the tension. It was the clarity. Ross didn't tiptoe. She didn't soften her wording. She didn't hint. She accused. Directly. Forcefully. And in doing so, she gave voice to fears that had been simmering quietly for months. Fears of an agency pulled in directions it shouldn't go, by forces it shouldn't answer to. Speculation continues to spread across social platforms. Some posts suggest more names might come forward. Others claim additional lawsuits could surface. A few even question whether internal whistleblowers might step up next. None of this is confirmed, of course. But the very fact that people are talking this way shows how deeply the trust issue has taken root. The bigger picture is this. Institutions don't crumble dramatically. They erode silently. One compromised decision here, one retaliatory firing there, one politically motivated question slipped into an interview. And before anyone realizes what happened, the mission has shifted. That's the danger Ross was warning about, not just for the agents involved, but for the health of the justice system itself. Because when the public starts wondering whether law enforcement is operating with a political tilt, it opens the door to something far more dangerous. The belief that justice is negotiable, that outcomes depend on alignment, not truth, that loyalty matters more than legality. And that's a path no democracy can afford to walk down. The confrontation ended, but the questions didn't. If these firings happen the way the lawsuits and allegations claim, then the Bureau isn't just facing internal turmoil. It's facing a legitimacy problem, one that won't be fixed with press releases or talking points, one that requires transparency, reform, and accountability at the highest levels. As viewers, we have to ask, if the people responsible for protecting fairness aren't being treated fairly themselves, what does that mean for the rest of us? The hearing wasn't just a clash between 2 officials. It was a warning, a spotlight, a reminder that no institution is immune from pressure, and no institution stays neutral automatically. Neutrality has to be defended, constantly, especially from those who hold power over it. And as more information emerges, more filings, more testimony, more reports, we'll get a clearer picture of what was really happening behind the scenes. But one thing is certain, this moment wasn't routine. It was a line in the sand. And what comes next will determine how much trust the public has left. That if you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. There's a lot more happening behind these hearings than what makes the headlines, and we're here to unpack every part of it.